Welcome everybody. This meeting today is a forum to discuss the issues of asylum seeking from the Sri Lankan perspective within an Australian context. It has arisen from a photographic exhibition termed Ancient Cultures, New Futures that Global Reconciliation has been involved in organising. The exhibition is displaying photographs from a post-conflict Sri Lanka and has attempted to create a conversation around the processes of dialogue and reconciliation within Sri Lanka. The forum today is to discuss how these issues pertain to and relate to the issue of asylum seeking in Australia. There's been a lot of attention in the last decade and a half from the Australian media, the Australian political landscape, and also from a social perspective around asylum seeking. From that has generated a strong set of Australian government responses which have attempted to address the problem. Rather than focusing upon that perspective, this forum is to try and examine and go behind the issues that might pertain to the push factors that have resulted in large numbers of Sri Lankans leaving Sri Lanka attempting to seek asylum in Australia. These have primarily been Tamils, however there have also been others involved, in particular small numbers of Sinhalese.
Thank you, Suresh. This is a very controversial issue. It's a highly politicized issue, and neither the Australian government nor the Sri Lankan government would accept the standard positions taken by some of the people who are involved in it. The standard position taken by the asylum seekers, as Suresh said, mainly the Tamils, is that they are persecuted and they are looking for a safe haven abroad in Australia. This is contradicted, and there are others who say, no, that is not the correct position. It is more or less economic refugees and not political refugees. Initially, I must say that this is not an issue confined to Sri Lanka. Asylum seekers is a global phenomenon, and there are complex issues involved in this process of people seeking safe havens abroad. If they are genuine victims of a state seeking refuge from persecution, I don't think anyone can oppose that. They are entitled to find refuge, and according to international agreements, countries like Australia are obliged to take them. And I think the Australian government believes in that, provided that they are not queue jumpers, because considering the volume of people who are seeking refuge, it is not possible for any state in the world to accommodate all the people who are seeking refuge. So the contention is that there should be a selective process. Selective process for genuine cases, yes. But if they are economic refugees, and that is the bone of contention, then the answer is no. Thank you.
Thank you. We might ask Lionel Wolpacker to present his perspective.
As my father said, this is not a question restricted to the Sri Lankan context. It is a worldwide problem. And the major issues that lead to asylum seekers leaving their homelands can be classified into mainly at least two. There are people who are leaving because of economic issues. They are looking for better benefits. then the second thing is, sort of say, political persecution or some sort of repressive environment that is existing in their own countries. From the way I see it, in Sri Lanka, both factors are there. So there are cases where, sort of, when people's human rights are affected, they leave. Now, one thing I don't agree with Mahinda is that about queue jumpers. Now, in any country, there will be people who have access to all the formal procedures, to seek refuge, to seek asylum. Whereas there will be a majority of the population who won't have that access. And say they will be persecuted, sort of, it may not be a direct persecution as such. Say for example, in Sri Lanka there was a 30-year war, and the war affected almost everybody in Sri Lanka. Not only Tamils, not only Sinhalese, Muslims, sort of everybody was affected. And now, not only the persecution side of it, of course, persecution will be, affecting some part of it. Then some of them will be affected by trauma, and they may not have proper opportunities for them to have employment or, to seek better opportunities. And then, so there are these two aspects. Some people will leave because of political persecution, and others will leave because they are looking for better economic opportunities. And now, when people leave, sort of say, under the international law, I think should be processed, and out of those who have come by boat here, as an average, 90% of those people have been found to be refugees. That's it.
Thank you. Can I maybe inject a different perspective into the conversation so far? One of the characteristics of the dialogue in Australia has been how polemicised it has become and how divided the situation is from a social perspective. There are people who want to support asylum seekers at all costs, and there are people who wish that all asylum seekers get turned back before they ever get to anywhere near Australia. Similarly, I think part of that polemicisation has been captured by the terms that have been used here, that somehow people are either politically persecuted or economic refugees, when in fact it's rarely that the situation is as clear or as definitive as that. There are small numbers of truly persecuted, politically persecuted people who've had to flee Sri Lanka, and we all know of cases both from Tamils as well as from Sinhalese who, for political reasons and their political connections, have had to leave the country because otherwise they face real persecution at the hands of various opposition groups. And similarly, we'd also be familiar with people who have simply left Sri Lanka and other countries to try and find a better life in ways which are not currently permitted under migration laws. However, I think what has been the case, and certainly what has been driving the issue forward with the large numbers of people who have been leaving Sri Lanka, is a combination of the two, where there is a perception, in particular within the Tamil community, that they don't have a voice, that they don't have true political representation, and that their position within the country is compromised, and that as a consequence of that, their economic potential is also compromised, and therefore they're leading to seek a better life for themselves in a country like Australia.
Could I maybe follow up that comment by posing to the group the question of the meaning of the category of economic migrants or economic asylum seekers. I find that problematic. There are clearly many countries poorer than Sri Lanka from whom there is not massive flight of people seeking refuge in Australia. It seems to me that simply the recognition that some groups of people are poorer and could find a wealthier, more secure life in Australia is not a sufficient explanation for the flight of large numbers of people from the country. Now, accepting what Suresh says, and that is that many of the people coming are not under direct threat of persecution, it raises the question of why people are leaving in the immediate post-conflict setting. And it seems to me that that's a very interesting and difficult problem that we need to think about. And I would suggest that we give consideration to the question of what it is that people need to stay in their country, and what is it that has led large numbers of people to feel either insecure or to feel that their own country, their own culture, their own people, their own religion no longer provide a safe haven for themselves and their children.
I think this is a narrow definition of dividing between political refugee and economic refugee. The connotation of economic refugee is people moving around the world for plus gain. I think this is much more complex. What might be, besides political refugees, is situation of social dead end. A situation of social dead end does not allow social mobility, does not allow to people to improve their condition and not economic condition, their condition of living. Thus, it creates despair. Despair is the situation of social dead end. Despair is the situation that people cannot see where they can move forward. The reason that despair grows doesn't have necessarily to do with the presence of army or not. I think this is this completely secondary element, is the way that society is put on standstill.